Commander Threx Valorian stared at his screen without blinking. His fingers hovered above the control panel, frozen. He had commanded warships for over 300 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched entire star systems burn under his own orders. Nothing had ever made his hands shake like this. The scanner results glowed red on the screen. A single word blinked over and over. Impossible. His second officer, a young Draxian soldier named Vex, stepped closer. "Sir? What is it?" Threx did not answer right away. He zoomed the image closer. What he saw was not a ship. It was not a station. It was a weapon, and it was the size of an entire planet. "Sir," Vex said again, his voice shaking now too. "That cannot be real. Nothing built by lesser races could be that large." Threx finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but every word carried weight. "Send the warning to every system. Humanity is done hiding." The bridge went silent. No one moved. Somewhere far away, a war was about to begin, and no one in the galaxy was ready for it. To understand this moment, we must go back. 50 years earlier, humanity was young in space. They had just discovered how to travel between stars. They were small, weak, and alone. Other species had been flying between galaxies for thousands of years. Humans were the new kids in a very old, very dangerous playground. Most alien empires did not even notice humanity at first. Earth was just another blue dot on a star map. But some empires did notice, and they did not like what they saw. One such empire was called the Karathi Dominion. The Karathi were proud, cruel, and used to being feared. They believed strength meant everything. When they found a small human colony on the edge of known space called New Haven, they decided to send a message. Not with words, with fire. New Haven was a peaceful colony. Farmers, engineers, teachers, and children lived there. It had no weapons, no army, no defense fleet. It was simply a group of people trying to build a new life among the stars. The Karathi ships arrived without warning. Their commander, a cold and merciless being named Drask Molan, gave a short order. "Destroy it. Let the humans learn their place." Within 1 hour, New Haven was gone. Not damaged, not conquered, gone. Turned to ash and dust, scattered across space. News of the attack reached Earth days later. The images were horrifying. Buildings turned to rubble. Fields burned into black scars. Families lost forever. The whole planet watched in stunned silence. Everyone expected humanity to respond with anger, to send ships, to demand justice, to fight back immediately, even if it meant losing. But humanity did something no one expected. They said nothing. No ships were sent. No angry speeches were given to the galaxy. No demands were made. Earth's leaders closed their borders to outside communication. All human colonies pulled back their people. Trade routes with other species were quietly shut down. Ships stopped flying to human space. It was as if humanity had simply disappeared. The Karathi Dominion celebrated. They believed they had proven their point. The humans were weak. The humans were scared. The humans had learned their lesson. Other alien species were confused, but most agreed with the Karathi's opinion. A quiet species mourns and moves on, they said. Humans were no threat. They were simply another young race that had been taught a hard lesson about the reality of space. For 10 years, this silence continued. Human space became a mystery. No trade ships came in or out. No messages were sent. No human diplomats appeared at galactic meetings. Some believed humanity had become extinct from grief and fear. Some believed they were rebuilding quietly, licking their wounds. A few even forgot humans existed at all. But something else was happening, something no one could see. Deep inside Earth's solar system, far from any watching eyes, human scientists and engineers were working day and night. They were not hiding out of fear. They were hiding out of purpose. The project began just 3 months after the attack on New Haven. It started with one woman, Dr. Elena Castillo, a quiet but brilliant engineer who had lost her younger brother in the attack. He had been a teacher at New Haven's only school. He had been teaching a class of children when the Karathi ships arrived. None of them survived. Elena did not cry for long. She turned her grief into focus. She gathered a small team of the best scientists, engineers, and thinkers Earth had ever produced. She brought them to a secret facility built deep underground, far from any city, hidden from satellites and spies. Her plan was insane. Even her own team thought so at first. She wanted to build a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Not a ship, not a station, a weapon built from an entire planet. "It's impossible," said one of her top engineers, a man named Rajiv Patel, during their first meeting. "No species has ever built something that large. The materials alone would take decades to gather. The engineering problems are endless." Elena did not argue with him. She simply showed him a photo of her brother's classroom, taken before it burned to ash. Rajiv looked at the photo for a long time. Then he nodded. "Then we better start today," he said. And so, the impossible project began. Humanity chose a lifeless, rocky planet on the edge of their solar system. It had no atmosphere, no life, nothing of value, except its size and its core of dense metal. This planet would become their canvas. The first years were the hardest. Robots and machines had to be built first, thousands of them, to begin digging into the planet's crust. Human workers could not survive there yet. The radiation and cold were too extreme. Everything had to be automated. Rajiv led the mining operations. Machines chewed through solid rock day and night, hollowing out massive tunnels deep into the planet's body. The plan was bold beyond imagination. Turn the planet's very core into an engine, and its rocky shell into the greatest weapon system ever built. But not everything went smoothly. In the third year, a massive tunnel collapse killed 12 engineers who had gone in to fix a broken drilling machine. Elena remembered each of their names. She held a small memorial at the site, then ordered the work to continue the very next day. There was no time to stop, no time to grieve fully. The galaxy was still out there, and the Karathi were still strong. In the 7th year, an early power test went horribly wrong. The team had built the first small prototype of the weapon's main energy core, a machine meant to store and release enormous amounts of power. During testing, the core overloaded. The explosion could be seen from Earth's moon. 3 more engineers died that day, including one of Rajiv's closest friends. That night, for the first time, Rajiv doubted the mission. He sat alone in his quarters, staring at nothing. Elena found him there. "We keep losing people," Rajiv said quietly. "Maybe this is too big. Maybe we're not meant to build something like this." Elena sat beside him. She did not offer empty comfort. She simply said, "Every person we lose reminds us why we started. We are not doing this to become like the Karathi. We are doing this so no one else ever loses a brother, a sister, a child, the way so many of us already have." Rajiv looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded, stood up, and went back to work. The project continued. Slowly, painfully, year by year, the weapon began to take shape. The planet's outer crust was carved into massive plates that could shift and move, forming defensive layers as strong as any battleship's armor. Deep inside, the planet's core was rebuilt into an engine so powerful that it could bend space itself. Weapon systems the size of cities were built into the planet's surface, hidden beneath rock and dust, invisible from space. It took decades, it took thousands of lives lost to accidents, radiation, and the sheer danger of the work. But slowly, the weapon grew. And through it all, human society outside the project changed too. Every citizen on Earth knew something big was happening, even if only a few knew the full truth. Children were raised knowing that patience and unity were more powerful than anger. Schools taught engineering and science with new passion. An entire generation grew up believing that humanity's future depended on quiet strength, not loud threats. Meanwhile, the rest of the galaxy moved on with its own affairs. Wars between alien empires continued. Trade routes expanded. New species were discovered and conquered or welcomed. Humanity became a forgotten memory, a footnote in galactic history. That species that went quiet after New Haven. The Karathi Dominion, in particular, grew even more powerful and arrogant during this time. They expanded their territory further, attacking smaller species who could not defend themselves, always using the same excuse. Strength decides who deserves to survive. Commander Drask Molin, the same officer who had destroyed New Haven, rose through the ranks quickly. He became a hero among his people, celebrated for teaching humanity a lesson. He rarely thought about Earth anymore. To him, humans were nothing more than a memory of an easy, one-sided victory. He had no idea what was growing quietly in the dark, far from any prying eyes. By the 10th year of the project, strange energy readings began appearing on the edges of human space. At first, they were faint, barely noticeable blips on distant alien scanners. A few curious scientists from neutral species tried to investigate, but found nothing unusual on the surface. Human ships quietly redirected any outside visitors before they could get too close. By the 15th year, the readings grew stronger. A few alien governments began to whisper questions. What was happening in human space? Why did strange energy patterns keep appearing near their old solar system? Were the humans finally rebuilding their fleet after all these years? No one had the full answer, and humanity made sure of that. Elena Castillo, now much older, with gray streaks in her hair and deep lines on her face from decades of stress and grief, stood one day at the control center overlooking the massive project. Rajiv, now the lead director of engineering, stood beside her. Together they looked out through a reinforced window at the planet before them. What had once been a plain, lifeless rock was now something else entirely. Its surface shimmered faintly with hidden defense systems. Massive engine ports, larger than entire cities, dotted its curved horizon. Deep within, a heartbeat of pure energy pulsed steadily, alive and waiting. 20 years, Rajiv said softly. 20 years, and we're almost there. Elena nodded, her eyes filled with quiet determination. New Haven will never be forgotten. And after this, no colony, no world, no child will ever be destroyed so easily again. Rajiv turned to her. Do you think we're ready? Do you think it's really finished? Elena's answer was calm, steady, and firm. It doesn't matter if we're ready. The galaxy already thinks we're gone. This is exactly the moment we need. At that very moment, deep within the planet's core, engineers prepared for the first full activation test in history. This was not a small prototype anymore. This was the real thing. The entire planet, ready to awaken for the very first time. Alarms began to sound softly throughout the control center. Engineers moved quickly to their stations, screens filled with numbers, energy levels rising steadily, higher than anything ever recorded in human history. Rajiv's hands trembled slightly over the activation controls. Elena placed a steady hand on his shoulder. For everyone we lost, she said quietly, for everyone we will protect. Rajiv took a deep breath and pressed the final command. The entire planet began to glow. Deep space sensors thousands of light years away detected the sudden, massive spike in energy. Alarms rang out in observatories, alien command centers, and scanning stations across dozens of star systems. No one understood what they were looking at. No one had ever seen anything like it. And far away on the bridge of a Karathi warship, Commander Threx Valorian stared at his screen in stunned silence, watching the birth of something the galaxy was not prepared for. The long, quiet years of humanity's patience were finally coming to an end. Inside the control center, Rajiv Patel watched the numbers climb higher than any of them had ever imagined. Energy levels that should have taken hours to build rose in minutes. The whole room trembled slightly, not from danger, but from the sheer power moving beneath their feet. Core temperature stable, one engineer called out. Power output and climbing past safe limits. Do we shut it down? Rajiv asked, his eyes locked on Elena. Elena Castillo did not blink. She had waited 20 years for this moment. She was not about to stop now because of fear. Let it run, she said. We built it to hold more than this. Trust the design. The room went quiet except for the low hum of machines working harder than ever before. Sweat formed on foreheads. Hands hovered over emergency switches. Everyone in that room understood one simple truth. If the weapon failed now, it would not just kill them. It could destroy the entire solar system. Then, slowly, the numbers stopped climbing. They leveled off. Steady. Controlled. Alive. A soft cheer broke out across the control center. Engineers hugged each other. Some cried. 20 years of pain, loss, and sacrifice had led to this single moment. And it had worked. Rajiv let out a breath he did not know he was holding. "We did it," he whispered. "We actually did it." Elena allowed herself a small, tired smile, but her eyes remained serious. "This is only the beginning," she said. "Now the galaxy will start asking questions, and we are not ready to answer them yet." She was right. Far beyond their solar system, alarms were already ringing. Thousands of light years away on a quiet outpost near the edge of neutral space, a small scanning station picked up the strange energy spike. The station belonged to a peaceful trading species called the Milrenians, small crab-like beings known across the galaxy for their skill in commerce, not war. A young technician named Sil Korveth stared at his screen in confusion. The reading was massive, unlike anything his instruments had ever recorded. He checked his equipment twice, thinking it was broken. It was not broken. "Sir," he called to his supervisor, "you need to see this." His supervisor, an older Milrenian named Dane Orsu, walked over and studied the screen carefully. His antennae twitched with worry. "Where is this coming from?" Sil zoomed the star map. His claws trembled slightly as he pointed to a small, unremarkable star system on the edge of the display. "Here, sir. It's coming from Earth's system." Dane frowned. "The quiet ones? The ones who vanished 20 years ago?" "Yes, sir." Dane stared at the numbers for a long moment. He had heard the old stories like everyone else. Humans were the species that got destroyed by the Karathi and simply disappeared into silence. No one important, no one dangerous. But these numbers told a different story. "Send this data to the Trade Council," Dane said slowly. "And send a copy to Karathi Command as well. If something is happening in that system, they will want to know." Sil hesitated. "Should we investigate ourselves, sir?" Dane shook his head firmly. "No. We are traders, not soldiers. Let others handle this. We simply report what we see." Neither of them realized that their small, simple report would soon shake the entire galaxy. The message reached Karathi Command 3 days later. It landed on the desk of a rising young officer, Commander Drask Molan, the very same officer who had destroyed New Haven 20 years earlier. Drask had grown older, but his cruelty had not softened. He now commanded one of the largest fleets in the Dominion, feared across a dozen star systems. He read the report with mild interest at first, expecting nothing important. Human space had been silent for 2 decades. Surely this was some kind of natural event, a solar flare or a strange cosmic accident. But as he read further, his interest sharpened. Energy output greater than an entire war fleet combined. A single point of origin, coming from a planet that had shown no life, no activity, nothing at all for 20 years. Drask called his science officer, a nervous but brilliant Karathi named Yeltrin Cass. "Explain this to me," he demanded, pointing at the report. "What could create an energy signature this large from a single source?" Yeltrin studied the numbers carefully, his claws tapping nervously against the console. "Sir, I have never seen anything like this, not from any known technology, not from any species we have encountered. Could it be a new type of ship? A massive dreadnought?" Yeltrin shook his head. "The energy spread is too wide, sir. This is not coming from a ship. Based on the readings, this looks like it is coming from an entire planet." Drask laughed, a short, sharp sound with no humor in it. "A planet? That is impossible. No species has the technology to weaponize an entire planet, not even us." Yeltrin did not laugh. His eyes stayed fixed on the numbers. "With respect, sir, the data does not lie. Something happened in that system. Something big. Drask's laughter faded. He stared at the star map, at the small quiet system that held Earth. 20 years ago, he had destroyed a human colony without a second thought. He had assumed the humans were broken, defeated, finished. For the first time in 20 years, a small seed of doubt began to grow in his mind. "Send a scout ship," he ordered finally. "One ship, quiet, careful. I want to know what the humans are hiding before we decide what to do about it." The scout ship chosen for the mission was small, fast, and nearly invisible to most sensors. Its pilot, a skilled young Karathi named Fen Dral, had flown dozens of secret missions before. He was confident, sharp, and a little too proud of his own skills. "This will be easy," Fen told his co-pilot as they entered human space. "Quiet system, no defenses, in and out before anyone notices." His co-pilot, a quieter officer named Rin, did not share his confidence. "The commander seemed worried, Fen." "That is not normal for him," Fen shrugged. "Old fears about old stories. The humans are weak. Everyone knows this." As they approached the edge of the solar system, their sensors began picking up strange readings. Faint energy signals, invisible defense grids, hidden patrol patterns moving with careful, disciplined precision. This was not the pattern of a weak, broken species. This was the pattern of a civilization that had been quietly preparing for war. Fen's confidence began to fade. "Slow down," Rin warned. "Something is not right here." They moved carefully past what looked like an empty asteroid field. But their scanners picked up faint traces of hidden structures buried within the rocks. Small outposts, camouflaged perfectly, watching silently. "They have been watching this whole area," Fen whispered, suddenly less sure of himself. "This is not what we expected." Then they saw it. At first it looked like just another planet, gray and lifeless, similar to thousands of others across the galaxy. But as their ship drew closer, the sensors screamed with warnings. The energy readings were off the charts. Strange metal structures poked through the planet's rocky surface, hidden carefully beneath layers of dust and stone, but visible now to their close-range scanners. "By the ancestors," Rin whispered, his voice shaking. "That's not a planet anymore. That's—" He could not finish his sentence. Neither of them had words for what they were looking at. Massive engine ports, larger than entire cities, dotted the planet's surface. Deep grooves ran across its curved horizon, forming patterns that looked disturbingly similar to weapon systems, but on a scale neither of them had ever imagined possible. The planet pulsed gently with a faint, steady glow, like a giant sleeping heart. "We need to leave," Fen said quickly, his hands moving fast over the controls. "Now." But it was too late. A soft chime rang through their cockpit. A single message appeared on their screen sent directly to their ship. No threats, no warnings, just calm, simple words. "You have been seen. You may leave in peace. This is not yet the time for war." Fen stared at the message, his heart pounding. They let us find them," he whispered. "They wanted us to see this." Rin's voice trembled. "Fen, get us out of here. Now." Fen did not need to be told twice. He turned the ship sharply and pushed the engines to full power, racing away from the strange, glowing planet as fast as their small ship could carry them. Behind them, deep within the control center on that mysterious world, Elena Castillo watched the scout ships retreat on her monitor. Rajiv stood beside her, arms crossed. "They'll report this," Rajiv said quietly. "Yes," Elena agreed. "They will." "Are you worried?" Elena thought for a long moment before answering. "I am worried about war. I am worried about more lives lost. But I am not worried about them finding us anymore. The waiting is over, Rajiv. It was always going to end eventually." Fen and Rin's ship arrived back at Karathi Command 3 days later, badly shaken but alive. They were brought directly to Drask Molin's private chamber, where the commander waited with growing impatience. "Report," Drask demanded, his voice cold and sharp. Fen's hand still trembled slightly as he spoke. Sir, it's real. Everything in the data was real. There is a planet in human space that has been turned into some kind of weapon. It's massive, sir. Larger than anything we have ever built. And they knew we were there. They let us see it, then let us leave. Drask's face darkened. They allowed you to escape? Why would they do that? Rin spoke up, his voice quiet but firm. I believe it was a message, sir. They wanted us to know they are no longer weak. They wanted us to be afraid. The chamber fell into heavy silence. Drask stood slowly from his chair, walking to the large window overlooking his fleet. Hundreds of warships floated silently outside, a symbol of Karathi strength built over centuries. For the first time in his long career, Drask felt something unfamiliar creeping into his chest. Not confidence, not pride, fear. Send this information to the High Council immediately, he ordered finally, his voice tight. Every empire needs to know what is happening in that system. Within days, the news spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Every major power, every alien empire, every neutral trading guild received the same shocking report. The quiet, forgotten species known as humans had built something the size of a planet, something powerful beyond imagination, hidden deep within their own solar system for 20 long years. Panic spread quickly through Galactic Council chambers. Some empires demanded immediate military action, wanting to destroy the weapon before it could ever be used. Others argued for caution, fearing that any attack might trigger an even greater disaster. Neutral species like the Milrenians simply hoped to stay far away from whatever was about to happen. In every corner of known space, the same question echoed again and again. Why did the humans build this? And what did they plan to do with it? No human government answered these questions directly. No official statement was made. No threats were issued. Earth remained silent, just as it had been for the past 20 years, leaving the rest of the galaxy to wonder and fear in the darkness of not knowing. But deep within the heart of that mysterious planet weapon, Elena Castillo stood once again before her control center, watching reports of galactic panic scroll across her screens. Rajiv stood beside her, worry etched deeply into his tired face. They're afraid, Rajiv said softly. Every single one of them. Elena nodded slowly. Good, she said. Fear will make them think twice before attacking anyone else the way they attacked New Haven. But what if fear makes them attack us first? Rajiv asked, his voice tight with concern. What if they see us as a threat that needs to be destroyed before we can grow any stronger? Elena turned to face him, her eyes steady and calm despite the storm gathering across the galaxy. Then we will be ready for them, she said firmly. We did not spend 20 years building this weapon to hide in fear forever, Rajiv. We built it to protect what matters. And if the galaxy chooses war instead of peace, then we will not run from it again. Outside, far beyond their quiet solar system, alien fleets across a dozen empires began quietly preparing their ships. Council meetings stretched late into the night. Old alliances were tested. New fears took root. And deep in the coldest, darkest corner of Karathi space, Commander Drask Mullen stared at a star map showing the location of Earth's mysterious weapon, his mind racing with a single dangerous thought. Strike first, strike now, before it becomes too powerful to stop. The galaxy, once so certain of humanity's weakness, now trembled at the thought of what they had truly built in the silence of 20 long years. And the storm was only just beginning. Word of the planet weapon spread faster than any news in galactic history. Within 1 month, every major star system had heard the story. Every alien child had heard whispered tales of the sleeping giant hidden in human space. Every military commander in every empire had studied the same handful of blurry scans, trying to understand what they were truly looking at. Fear does strange things to powerful people. Some grow careful, some grow desperate, and some, like Commander Drask Mullen, grow dangerous. Drask stood before the Karathi High Council, a massive circular chamber filled with the Empire's oldest and most powerful leaders. 12 council members sat in high stone seats, their eyes locked on him as he spoke. We cannot wait, Drask said firmly, his voice echoing through the chamber. Every day we delay, that weapon grows stronger. We must strike now while we still have the advantage. An older council member, a wise and cautious Karathi named Elder Voss, raised a clawed hand. And if we attack, and the weapon survives, what then? We will have started a war with a species capable of building something no one else in the galaxy has ever created. That is exactly why we must destroy it now, Drask argued, before it becomes something we can no longer stop. The chamber erupted into heated debate. Some council members agreed with Drask, fearing that hesitation would only lead to disaster later. Others sided with Elder Voss, warning that attacking first could provoke exactly the kind of war they were trying to avoid. After hours of arguing, the council reached a decision. Not full-scale war. Not yet. But a show of force. A fleet would be sent to human space, not to destroy the weapon immediately, but to demand answers, and to prepare for battle if those answers were not given. Drask was given command of the fleet. He left the chamber with a grim smile on his face. He did not care about answers. He cared about ending the threat before it could grow any further. And deep down, he still carried the memory of New Haven, a memory that told him humans were weak no matter what strange weapon they had built. He would prove that memory right one way or another. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity faced its own difficult decisions. Elena Castillo stood before a large gathering of world leaders, military officers, and scientists inside a heavily protected underground chamber. The room was tense. Reports had come in of alien fleets gathering near the edges of human space. War, once a distant fear, now felt terrifyingly close. "They're sending ships," said General Marcus Webb, the head of Earth's Small Defense Council. "Karathi ships. A large fleet moving slowly but moving toward us." "How large?" Elena asked. "Large enough to destroy several planets if they wanted to," Webb answered grimly. "But they're not attacking yet. Our scouts believe they're coming to talk first. Or to threaten." Rajiv, sitting nearby, leaned forward. "The weapon isn't fully finished. We have basic defenses active, but the full power systems still need time." "How much time?" Webb asked. Rajiv hesitated before answering. 3 months, maybe less if we push the engineers harder." A heavy silence filled the room. 3 months was not much time if a hostile fleet was already on its way. Elena stood slowly, her eyes steady despite the tension in the room. "We do not attack first," she said firmly. "Whatever happens, humanity will not be the one to start this war. We built this weapon to protect ourselves, not to conquer others. If they come with threats, we answer with calm strength. If they come with violence, then we defend what we have built." General Webb nodded slowly. "And if they demand to speak with our leaders directly?" Elena took a deep breath. "Then I will speak with them myself." 3 weeks later, the Karathi fleet arrived at the edge of human space. Hundreds of warships spread out across the darkness, an intimidating wall of metal and weapons ready for battle. At the center of the fleet, Drask Molen stood on the bridge of his flagship staring at the distant glowing planet on his screen. "Send the message," he ordered. "Tell them we demand a meeting. Tell them we want to see this weapon of theirs up close, and if they refuse, we will assume the worst." The message was sent, calm but heavy with unspoken threat. Elena received the message within the hour. She looked at Rajiv, then at General Webb. "They want a meeting," she said, "face to face." "That could be a trap," Webb warned. "They could try to capture you or worse." Elena shook her head slowly. "If I refuse, they will see it as fear. If I go, I show them we are not afraid to stand before them, even now." She turned to Rajiv. "Prepare a small transport ship. I will go alone with only a small security team." Rajiv's face tightened with worry. "Elena, this is dangerous." "Everything about this has been dangerous since the day we started," Elena replied gently. "But we did not come this far to hide now." The meeting took place in neutral space, aboard a small, unarmed diplomatic station built specifically for this moment. Elena arrived with a handful of guards, calm and composed despite the danger surrounding her. Drask arrived with an intimidating escort of Karathi soldiers, his presence filling the room with cold authority. They sat across from each other at a simple table. Two leaders from vastly different worlds, staring into each other's eyes for the first time. "You built something dangerous," Drask began, his voice sharp and accusing. "Something that threatens the balance of power across this entire galaxy." Elena remained calm. "We built something to protect ourselves," she replied evenly. "After what happened at New Haven, we vowed it would never happen again. Not to us, not to any innocent world." Drask's eyes narrowed at the mention of New Haven. For a brief moment, something flickered behind his cold expression. Not quite guilt, but something close to it. He pushed the feeling away quickly. "New Haven was a lesson," he said coldly. "A necessary lesson about power." "New Haven was a massacre," Elena replied, her voice steady but firm. "Innocent people, children, teachers, families, destroyed without warning, without mercy, simply to prove a point." The room fell silent. Drask's soldiers shifted uncomfortably at the tension building between the two leaders. "We are not here to relive old history," Drask said finally, his tone sharp. "We are here because your weapon threatens every empire in this galaxy. I demand to know its true purpose. Is it meant for conquest? For revenge?" Elena leaned forward slightly. Her voice remained calm but carried unmistakable weight. "It is meant for peace," she said. "Not the peace of silence and fear, like the peace you forced upon us after New Haven. A peace built on strength. A peace where no empire, no matter how powerful, will ever again believe they can destroy an innocent world without consequence." Drask studied her closely, searching for weakness, for fear, for any sign of the broken, defeated species he remembered from 20 years ago. He found none. "And if my empire chooses war instead of peace?" he asked quietly. "What then?" Elena's answer was calm, clear, and unwavering. "Then we will defend ourselves. But we will not be the ones to strike first. We never wanted this weapon to be used at all. We simply wanted the galaxy to know that humanity would never again stand defenseless while our people are destroyed." For a long moment, Drask said nothing. The weight of her words hung heavily in the air between them. Finally, he stood slowly, his expression unreadable. "I will bring your words back to my council," he said. "But understand this, Dr. Castillo. Fear does not simply disappear because of calm words. My people are afraid of what you have built. And fear often leads to war, whether either of us wishes it or not." With that, he turned and left the room, his soldiers following closely behind. Elena remained seated for a long moment, staring at the empty space where he had stood, feeling the heavy weight of the galaxy's uncertain future resting on her shoulders. The meeting did little to calm the growing tension. Reports of the encounter spread quickly across the Karathi fleet, and opinions were sharply divided. Some officers respected Elena's calm strength, believing her words about peace. Others, including many close to Drask, believed her words were simply a clever trick, buying time while the weapon grew even more powerful. Aboard his flagship, Drask stood alone in his private quarters, staring out at the stars. His mind replayed Elena's words over and over. A peace built on strength. He understood strength. He had built his entire life around it. But something about her calm, unwavering resolve unsettled him in a way he could not quite explain. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. His science officer, Yeltrin Cass, entered nervously. "Sir," Yeltrin said quietly, "we've detected increased activity from the planet. Energy readings are rising again. It appears they may be preparing for something." Drask's jaw tightened. "Preparing for what? An attack?" "Unclear, sir. But the readings are far higher than before. If I had to guess, I believe they may be finishing the weapon's final systems." Drask's mind raced. If the weapon was truly nearing completion, waiting any longer would be a fatal mistake. The fear that had been growing inside him for weeks finally boiled over into cold, decisive action. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered, his voice hard and final. "We attack within the hour." Yeltrin's eyes widened in alarm. "Sir, the Council ordered us only to observe and negotiate, not to attack without their direct approval." The council is not here, Drask snapped. I am, and I will not risk the survival of our entire empire because a group of frightened old leaders cannot make a decision fast enough. Prepare the fleet. We strike now, before that weapon becomes something we can no longer stop. Yeltrin hesitated, clearly troubled, but ultimately nodded and left to relay the orders. Deep down he feared Drask was making a terrible mistake, but he also knew better than to argue further with his commander. Back on Earth, alarms began ringing throughout the underground command center. Rajiv rushed to the main control room, where General Webb and several officers stood staring anxiously at their monitors. The Karathi fleet is moving, Webb said grimly. They're heading straight for the weapons position, all ships full speed. Elena, who had just returned from her meeting with Drask, entered the room moments later, her expression darkening as she saw the reports. They're attacking, she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. They didn't even wait for a response from their own council, Webb said, shaking his head. This wasn't planned. This is that commander acting alone. Rajiv turned to Elena, his face tense with worry. The weapon's defenses are active, but we're still weeks away from full power. Can it hold against an entire fleet? Elena's expression hardened with quiet determination. It will have to. She turned to General Webb. Activate all defense systems immediately. Full alert status. No offensive action unless they fire first. And if they do fire first? Webb asked. Elena's eyes flashed briefly with pain, remembering New Haven, remembering every life lost to build this moment of protection. Then we show them exactly why we built this weapon in the first place. The Karathi fleet approached the mysterious planet weapon slowly, cautiously, despite Drask's earlier fury. Even now, closer than ever before, the sheer size of the weapon sent chills through every soldier aboard the approaching ships. It was no longer just a story, a distant rumor whispered through the galaxy. It was real, massive, and terrifyingly close. Drask stood on his bridge, staring intently at the planet growing larger on his view screen. Despite his earlier confidence, doubt crept quietly into his mind. He pushed it aside forcefully, gripping the edge of his command chair tightly. Weapons ready, he ordered coldly. Target the primary energy core. One clean strike and this threat ends today. His crew moved quickly, preparing the fleet's most powerful weapons, aiming directly at the heart of the mysterious planet. Tension filled the bridge, thick and suffocating. Sir, Yeltrin said nervously, watching the sensors closely. Their defense systems are activating. Energy shields, weapon batteries. It's like the entire planet is coming alive. Drask's eyes narrowed sharply. Then we strike before it fully awakens. Fire all weapons. Now, the order rang out clearly across the fleet. Hundreds of powerful energy weapons unleashed their fury simultaneously, streaking through the darkness of space toward the massive planet weapon below. For a brief, terrifying moment, silence gripped both sides, human and Karathi alike, as the devastating attack raced toward its target. Then, the planet's defenses responded. Massive energy shields flared to life across its surface, absorbing the incoming attack in a blinding flash of light. The explosion illuminated space itself, visible even to distant observers far beyond the battlefield. When the light finally faded, the planet remained intact, its defenses glowing brightly, undamaged and ready. Aboard his flagship, Drask stared in stunned disbelief at the screen before him. The attack that should have crippled any known defense system had barely scratched the surface of humanity's incredible creation. Impossible, he whispered, his confidence shattering completely. That's impossible. Behind him, Yeltrin's voice trembled as new alarms erupted across the bridge. Sir, the planet's weapon systems, they're powering up, all of them, at once. Drask's eyes widened in horror as the enormous planet-sized weapon began to awaken fully for the very first time, its terrifying power ready to respond to the Karathi's reckless attack. The galaxy was about to witness the true, devastating strength of humanity's final weapon. And nothing would ever be the same again. For one terrible second, everything on the Karathi bridge went silent. Every officer stared at the screen. Every alarm seemed to pause, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Then the planet opened its eyes. Massive panels along the surface slid apart, revealing glowing lines of energy running deep into the planet's core. Weapon ports the size of small moons rotated slowly, aiming outward. The soft, steady glow that had once pulsed gently now burned bright and fierce, like a star waking up after a long sleep. "Sir," Yeltrin said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Full activation confirmed. The weapon is online." Drask Molan gripped the arms of his command chair so tightly, his knuckles turned pale. He had ordered the first strike, expecting a quick, decisive victory. Instead, he had woken something ancient and terrifying, something built from 20 years of grief, patience, and quiet human resolve. "Fire everything we have," he ordered, his voice cracking slightly. "Do not let it gain any more strength." The Karathi fleet unleashed a second wave of attacks, hundreds of weapons blazing through space toward the awakened planet. Explosions lit up the darkness in brilliant flashes of red and orange. But this time, the planet did not simply defend. It answered. A single beam of light erupted from the planet's surface, thin at first, almost delicate. Then it grew, widening rapidly into a massive column of pure energy that tore through space with terrifying speed. It struck the lead Karathi cruiser directly, and the ship vanished instantly, swallowed whole by the blinding light. Gasps and cries of shock echoed across the Karathi fleet's communication channels. That's not possible," one officer stammered over the comm. "One shot destroyed an entire cruiser." More beams followed, precise and controlled, striking specific targets across the fleet rather than firing wildly. It was not chaos. It was calculated, careful, and terrifyingly accurate. Aboard Earth's command center, Rajiv Patel watched the battle unfold on his monitors, his hands trembling slightly despite years of preparation for this exact moment. "The automated defense systems are engaging perfectly," he reported to Elena, who stood beside him, her face calm but her eyes filled with quiet sorrow. "Just as we designed them. Minimal damage, maximum precision." "Casualties?" Elena asked quietly. Rajiv hesitated. "Several Karathi ships destroyed already. More will follow if they continue their attack." Elena closed her eyes briefly, the weight of every life lost, human and alien alike, pressing heavily on her heart. She had built this weapon to prevent tragedies like New Haven, not to create new ones. But she also understood, painfully, that sometimes protection required force. "Send another message to their commander," she said softly. "Give them one last chance to stop this." Aboard his flagship, Drask received Elena's message, calm words displayed clearly on his screen. "Withdraw your fleet now. We do not wish for further bloodshed. This is your final warning." Drask stared at the words, his mind racing. Around him, his once proud fleet was being torn apart, ship after ship destroyed by precise, unstoppable strikes from the awakened planet. Panic spread quickly among his crew, fear evident on every face around him. "Sir," Yeltrin urged desperately, "we need to retreat. If we continue, we will lose the entire fleet." Drask's pride fought fiercely against the harsh reality unfolding before him. He had spent his entire life believing in strength, in the idea that power alone decided everything. But now, faced with humanity's incredible creation, he realized painfully that strength alone was not enough. Wisdom, patience, and restraint mattered too. Lessons he had never truly learned. "Order the retreat," he finally said, his voice heavy with defeat. "All ships, withdraw immediately." The surviving Karathi ships turned quickly, retreating from the battlefield as fast as their engines could carry them. The planet's defenses ceased firing the moment the retreat began, respecting Elena's careful design. Defend firmly, but never pursue needlessly. As the last Karathi ship vanished into hyperspace, silence returned to the battlefield, broken only by drifting debris and the soft, steady glow of humanity's incredible weapon, now fully awake for the entire galaxy to see. News of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours, faster and further than any previous rumor. Every major empire, every neutral trading guild, every curious observer watched in stunned disbelief as detailed reports and recordings emerged from surviving Karathi crew members. A single planet, transformed into an unstoppable weapon, had defeated an entire war fleet in mere minutes, suffering almost no damage in return. Panic swept quickly through Galactic Council chambers. Emergency meetings were called across dozens of star systems. Leaders who had once dismissed humanity as weak and insignificant now stared nervously at reports describing the terrifying power hidden quietly within human space for 2 decades. On Milran, the peaceful trading world, Sil Korveth and his supervisor Dane Orsu watched the news with wide, disbelieving eyes. "You were right to report this carefully, sir," Sil said quietly, his claws trembling slightly. "If we had provoked them somehow," Dane nodded slowly, his antennae drooping with quiet relief. "We are lucky, Sil. Very lucky indeed." Across dozens of other systems, similar conversations echoed nervously. Species who had once ignored or dismissed humanity now scrambled to reconsider their relationships with Earth, fearful of provoking a species capable of such incredible strength. Back at Karathi Command, the High Council gathered urgently, faces pale and anxious as they reviewed detailed reports of the disastrous battle. Elder Voss, the cautious council member who had originally warned against attacking, stood slowly, his voice heavy with quiet frustration. "We warned against this recklessness," he said, glaring pointedly at Drask, who stood silently before the council, humiliated and defeated. "Now our fleet lies destroyed, and our empire faces a threat unlike anything we have ever encountered." Drask remained silent, accepting the harsh criticism without argument. His pride had been shattered completely, replaced instead by a painful, humbling realization of his own mistakes. "What do we do now?" another council member asked anxiously. "Do we prepare for further war? Do we retaliate?" Elder Voss shook his head firmly. "No. We have already seen the terrible cost of reckless aggression. It is time we consider a different path. Diplomacy, peace." The council members murmured quietly among themselves, clearly uncertain and afraid. After lengthy debate, they reluctantly agreed. A formal message would be sent to Earth, offering peace talks and acknowledging the tragic mistake of their unauthorized attack. Drask was ordered to personally deliver this message, a humbling task meant both as punishment and as a chance for redemption. Elena Castillo received the Karathi's formal request for peace talks with quiet relief, though her heart remained heavy with the weight of recent events. She agreed immediately, hopeful that diplomacy might finally replace fear and violence. The meeting took place once again aboard the neutral diplomatic station, but this time the atmosphere felt different. Drask arrived alone, without his usual intimidating escort, his posture humble and subdued. "Dr. Castillo," he began quietly, his voice lacking its previous coldness. "I have come to apologize on behalf of my empire for my reckless actions. Many lives were lost because of my decisions based on fear and pride rather than wisdom." Elena studied him carefully, surprised by his genuine humility. "Fear can make anyone act foolishly," she said gently. "I understand this more than you might realize." Drask nodded slowly, his eyes reflecting genuine regret. "I once believed strength alone determined worth, determined right and wrong. But your people have shown me a different kind of strength today, the strength to defend firmly, yet without cruelty, the strength to seek peace even after suffering great pain." Elena's expression softened slightly, remembering her brother, remembering New Haven, remembering the countless sacrifices made to reach this exact moment. "We built our weapon not from hatred, Commander Molan, but from grief and hope. Hope that no other species would ever again suffer the pain we experienced." Drask lowered his head respectfully. "Then let us work together to ensure that hope becomes reality, not just for humanity, but for every species in this galaxy." Elena extended her hand slowly, a gesture of trust and reconciliation. Drask hesitated only briefly before accepting it, sealing a fragile but genuine agreement between two very different worlds. News of the peace agreement spread quickly. calming much of the galaxy's initial panic. Other empires, watching closely, began reaching out cautiously to Earth, eager to establish friendly relations rather than risk provoking humanity's incredible power. Slowly, carefully, humanity stepped back onto the galactic stage, no longer the weak, forgotten species from 20 years ago, but a respected and cautious power, feared yet admired for their patience, discipline, and quiet strength. Back on Earth, Elena stood once again in the control center, overlooking the massive planet weapon that had changed everything. Rajiv approached quietly, standing beside her. "We did it," he said softly, a mixture of relief and lingering sadness in his voice. "Peace, at least for now." Elena nodded slowly, her eyes distant, remembering every sacrifice, every loss, every moment of doubt along their long journey. "We didn't do this for glory, Rajiv. We did it so no other family would suffer what mine did, so other worlds like New Haven would never again burn in silence." Rajiv placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Your brother would be proud, Elena. Everyone we lost along the way. They helped build something extraordinary, something to protect us all." Elena smiled softly, tears gently forming in her tired eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "I believe they would." Together they gazed out at the glowing planet before them, humanity's greatest achievement, symbol of pain transformed into purpose, weakness transformed into strength. Word of humanity's incredible weapon and its unexpected mercy spread far and wide across countless star systems, forever changing how the galaxy viewed the once-forgotten species from a small, quiet planet called Earth. No longer seen as weak or insignificant, humanity now stood as a symbol of quiet resilience, patient strength, and careful wisdom. Other species approached cautiously, eager to learn from humanity's example, hopeful to build friendships rather than provoke conflicts. Even the proud Karathi Dominion changed slowly under Drask Molin's humbled leadership, learning gradually the difference between true strength and reckless power. And deep within human space, the massive planet weapon remained ever watchful, silent and still, yet powerful and ready. A permanent reminder to the galaxy that humanity, once pushed to its limits, would never again stand defenseless. Elena Castillo passed away peacefully many years later, remembered forever as the woman who transformed unimaginable grief into humanity's greatest protector. Rajiv Patel continued her legacy, guiding future generations wisely, ensuring humanity's strength remained balanced always by compassion and careful restraint. And so, the galaxy learned a valuable lesson from a species once thought weak and insignificant. True strength was never simply about size, power, or fear. True strength was patience. True strength was resilience. True strength was humanity itself.